We see that the few remaining plumbers are acting as a rebellion, that being Gwen, Rook, Bluekidge, and Hobble, along with Albedo acting as a face, pretending to be Ben running around helping normal citizens so that they don't lose hope, that there's still a chance to get free from the incursions and their invasion of their planet Earth. They had to make do with what they could while being chased down by the foot soldiers. They'd enter into a parts store that had a go-kart on display. Having to rig something together, Rook crashed through the window and barely managed to escape as their ride was crushed by a mutated Tokustar. But a watch repair shop owner hid them till it was safe. We'd later see them trying a crazy idea that seemed sound in a desperate situation. But Atea and her group had surrounded them and started fighting. She was about to order that they fire upon them, but someone cut her off, as one of the frogs attacked her, stealing her gun using their tongue and smacking it into the head of another soldier in the process. In the ensuing fight, Atea had pulled off their helmet, and they saw that this incursion had a black pair of shades, and was actually more toned than the other frogs around them. Telling the group to call him Bullfrag, he then leads the rebels to his ship, hidden out into the forest, asking Rook if he can handle it. They knock out Bullfrag because they aren't sure of his intentions and take him to a place they could interrogate him. Rook asked why it was that he helped them escape, and Bullfrag responds that should be obvious. As Hobble asked maybe he's wired or something, so Rook begins to pat him down and Gwen walks over looking them in the face as they stared back at her. She tells him that he's cool before releasing him from a magical energy bands she'd had around him and asks Rook to do a double check of the area just to make sure there aren't any other incursions around, and he nodded, going to do so with Albedo getting back and almost attacking them when he saw Bullfrag before Gwen stopped him. They ask what their next move is and Bullfrag says next move is bettering their forces. We then cut to them in the plumber base, with him acting as they were his prisoners, with them in handcuffs. What the frogs didn't know, those cuffs were just normal metal cuffs you could buy at a store. But they let them inside to take the rebels to be placed into cells. Bluekidge handed Bullfrag a device that he had hidden, and they put it on one of the cameras as they then broke the cuffs, with them saying that should give them time to free the other plumbers and find Psychobos too. Gwen then tells Rook to lead the way as the Ravonagander then proceeds to take point. They got to the controls of the cells and Rook says that they changed the codes, with Bluekidge hitting it with something, making all the cells open up and bring the cell out for Driba and Magister Patalidae down to them, as Driba tells them that he's weak and needs more water than what his rations could give him. Gwen says that they need to find Max. And we then cut to another floor of the base as Argent was running from his open cell, trying to escape, and the elevator pinging with Bullfrag, Albedo, and Gwen walking out from it, finding Max in a cell where he was looking weak himself and trying to stand. Bullfrag goes over and helps Max up and onto the bottom bunk of the cell's beds, telling him to take it easy, calling him Grandpa. Max calls Bullfrag Ben, confusing Albedo as he'd asked, Ben? With Gwen smiling and wrapping her arms around Bullfrag, leaning up to kiss him as he hits the Omnitrix, changing back to human again while kissing her back. She jokingly says, "Seems that old story is true," making Ben and Max laugh, though Albedo didn't know what story Gwen was talking about, as they hear Atea calling out to them. There is no flirting going on there. Gwen, however, does still blast Atea because of everything the incursions had done, knocking her out in the process. Ben asked if she felt better and she responds, "A little." Max says that Ben being there would cause all kinds of trouble, but asked how exactly he'd managed it when they'd seen the explosions, and he says that he'll explain that later, once they've stopped the invasion. Nodding, they asked what's the plan, as Rook contacts them by a communications device, and Gwen asked if they'd found anything yet. Rook tells them that they have located Psychobos. The bad news, he may have sent a signal to a mutant Tokustar. Ben tells them that he'll handle the way bad. They should just focus on taking down Psychobos and getting the other plumbers free and up to fighting shape. With a nod, Max lets him go off, as Gwen tells him to be careful. Albedo says that he wants to go with Ben, and he tells him fine, but he has to act as crowd control, keep the people away from the battles, so no one gets hurt. Nodding in agreement to that, Albedo and Ben then both run off to go fight off the Waybads, with Ben changing into Thunderwing and letting out a piercing cry as he flapped his monstrous wings, creating the sound of thunder as he'd flown up into the sky. The people around them, human and alien alike, cheered seeing Ben and Albedo used his duo tricks to get the people to safety, while storm clouds began to develop over Bellwood. The storm clouds worsened as rain began to fall over the city and lightning flashed, striking the female Waybad that had started attacking, causing them to let out a roar of pain as they blasted at him as he flew around in the sky, barely avoiding the attacks, as he continued making the lightning strike her over and over, causing them to become dazed before being completely knocked out cold, though more Waybads began to show. They'd taken down Psychobos and radioed in that they managed to take them down, but Ben says that they're still attacking. Find a way to help contain them, as he continues to hold them off, with Argent accidentally being caught on film, firing his quills at the female Waybad, causing her to fall, holding her leg from the pain. The people called him a hero for doing that, and he says to go get their hero some pants. The others show up with a no-void projector attached to the proto-truck, blasting the Waybads and saying that they would go collect them all. As Milius tries to blast Ben, but lightning strikes the ship, shooting it down in the process as Thunderwing uses his talons to rip open the ship and grab the Emperor and throw him over towards Max and the others. Changing back to human, Ben walks over with Milius, saying that even without the Waybads, he still had his armada, which was more than enough to destroy the Earth along with his conquest ray. Though Max says that they have him, and Gwen uses her magic to seal Milius in a bubble that he couldn't get out of. They then hear Atea's voice saying that puts her in charge, just as planned, while walking over, confusing Albedo as he asked what plan exactly. Ben goes on to explain that he made a deal with the princess to help get Daddy out of the way. That device she put in his pod wasn't a bomb, it was a communications device that had Ship attached to it secretly. The explosion they saw was some fireworks she'd strapped to the back of the pod. The extended fuse was lit by the engines taking off, and with them being held in place by putty attached to them, they had no place to fly off to and exploded as if they were the pod itself going up in flames. Once they were out of range where Milius wouldn't be able to intercept, Ship undid his shackles and he'd used the device to get the code to unlock the incursion DNA by contacting Azimuth. After getting back to Earth, Ship then played spy by being secretly attached to the insides of one of the incursion communications modules. And when the others came up, well, they know the rest. Atea then says that as per their agreement, she would take the Armada and return to the borders of the previous year of the galactic calendar. No more being on Earth, no more being on Ravana, and they retreat from their feud with Vilgaxia. And as part of the agreement, they will not return to Ravana or Earth to try to conquer it for at least 100 generations of their species' lifespans, and 50 for Vilgaxia. Grandpa Max says they accept the terms, and he hereby approves of the deal, as Magister in charge of the Earth branch. Atea then looks at Gwen, saying that she guesses this means no wedding invite, and Gwen crosses her arms, saying that Atea destroyed most of the venues on their list of possible places. She's for sure not getting one. The princess, now Empress, says fair enough and prepares her armada for departure. Max tells Ben that playing the long game was smart this go around, and keeping out of their heads meant Psychobos couldn't tell Milius of their plans. Ben nods and sits down, saying that after all that, he needs a vacation.